guys, welcome back to my channel. For those who are new, my name is Angelica and I'm an ED LPN, and I'm also currently a third year transitioning to fourth year BSN student. So for today's video, I'm going to be talking to you guys about my recruitment. As you can tell from the title above, I got a new job at a new hospital, and I'm going to talk to you guys about the recruitment process that I did and tips and tricks, or just tips in general regarding your resume and your reference, because it is new grad season. So I'm going to be looking down on my laptop a lot because all my notes are on here, and yeah, let's get started. So for the timeline in regards to my application to hiring, I applied on March 12th. I submitted my application, and honestly, I didn't think much of the application overall. I submitted applications to different units all over the hospital, and I applied at dialysis because they recently opened the LPN scope for dialysis. I applied at step down cardio. I applied one more, and I applied to 2 emergency units in the same health authority, if that makes sense. But yeah, I didn't think much of the application, to be honest. I just submitted it to explore my scope a bit, just because I am graduating with my BSN next year. I wanted to explore units before I come up with a postgraduate plan. But yeah, I honestly did not take the application seriously, which I know sounds bad, but that's how I was feeling. In regards to the application, I just uploaded my resume, I submitted my BCCNM license number, and I also submitted any relevant work experience to the unit that I applied to. So for example, one of the questions was in hemodialysis was, do you have further education in regards to hemodialysis? I said no, which is probably why I didn't get the job. And then for the 2 emerge units that I applied for, they basically asked was the amount of years that I have working in emergency units, and the question that they asked was also, have you worked in emerge? If so, where, and what are your thoughts about working in a high intense busy unit? And I answered that, and I got a call back to one of the hospitals. So the next day, March 13th, I got an email for an interview, which is literally the next day, because I applied on a Sunday. I got an email on Monday at around 9 a.m. asking me for an interview request, and there was 4 dates, 3 days and 4 times that they gave me, and I just did the next day at 9 in the morning. I did my interview the next day. It was a Zoom meeting with the manager and the CNE. It was an hour long, but I only used 40 minutes. Honestly, I loved how it was Zoom because I would not know what to say if the interview was in person, because I'm out of town. In the interview, they basically asked me why I applied. They gave me a bunch of code blue, code white, and charting questions. It was a little bit funny because they asked me where would you chart your vitals, and in my current hospital we chart on paper. And so when I said, oh, we chart vitals on the vitals flow sheet, or the nursing the ENAR, the emergency nursing assessment record at the back, and they looked at me like they were so confused. And then I was like, oh, we chart on paper at my current hospital. And they're like, okay. So this current hospital, so the new hospital I applied for charts online, so that's why they're like In regards to the interview, I always tell people to ask questions, because that shows that you are very interested in the position that you applied for. A few of the questions I asked for was, what does the line look like? What does the scheduling look like? As a BSN student going to 4th year, my biggest thing in my head was preceptorship, and I did ask what the line looked like. They said, okay, it's gonna look like this with this many days off, and I was like, okay, perfect. And another question was benefits. Benefits is a big question for me because the last hospital I applied for, I'm a casual, so I don't really get benefits unless I do the pay out of pocket one. And so that was a question I asked. And another question I asked was certain certification. Like for me, because I currently work at another hospital but a different health authority, I had to ask if I had to redo my Learning Hub certifications, and they basically said yes. But ask about certifications. Do you need anything like ALS, PALS, and stuff like that at the unit you apply for? The next thing we're going to talk about is your resume. I feel like people put too much on a resume, and I did that mistake at first, to be honest. But one of my neighbors, she is a lovely woman. She used to be a manager at one of the units in one of the hospitals downtown Vancouver, and so she looked at my resume and she told me what to put on it, and she told me what managers look out for on the resumes. So I'm not going to show you guys my resume, but the first thing obviously I have is my contact information, my name. But at the top of my resume, I always put my objective. For me, I'm a full-time nursing student looking for a part-time job and to gain work experience. As a new grad, I think you'd be like something along the lines of new graduate nurse looking for a full-time or part-time job to gain experience and gain hours, or exploring yourself, asking why are you looking for this job and what do you want out of this job. Underneath, I put education and certification. I put my current school at the very top because obviously that's what I'm doing and that's the most current. Underneath, I have my LPN college underneath, and then right underneath in bold, I put my LPN license number as well as my care aid registry number because I worked as an HCA for a bit. So if ever, put your new RN license and number, and then other certification underneath, like your my BLS is underneath, my WHMIS, my my violence prevention, etc. The one thing people always put on a resume that I've noticed you do not need to put on there is your GPA. Do not put your GPA on your resume, okay? Honestly, I feel like employers don't need to know your GPA, to be honest, and honestly they just want to know if you passed your NCLEX or what is it, PNREX or NCLEX PN or whatever exam that you took. They just want to know if you passed that and if you have a current license to work as a nurse. So underneath that, I have my work experience / volunteer experience. I did not put any of my clinical experiences on my resume and I still got the job. I know some girls like to go fancy and go ham and put their clinical experiences in the resume. It's up to you. Honestly, my neighbor saw it. She saw no need for it, so I removed it. I put the most recent hospital I work at. I put my fast food, even my fast food work experience that I do while I'm in school here, I put on my resume even though it's only 3 months. My neighbor mentioned that having your resume with work experience for the past 5 years is enough. They don't need anything more than that. So I actually had to delete quite a bit of work experience. I still keep it in case I might need it later on in the future. I don't know, but I just like to have the resume that I am submitting only have the work experience for the past 5 years. Next thing we're going to be talking about is references, and I always emphasize this. You guys need to have a good relationship with your past clinical instructors to let them give you a good reference. I always try to build a good rapport with my instructors, even if they're not the greatest instructors, because I know at the end of the day they will be my references for when I get a job. There's one instructor I always go to. She's not an instructor anymore, but she's my go-to. Like she is the most amazing woman ever. Like every time I need something, I always ask her to be a reference, and she always says yes. And I know she's watching this because she's like my #1 fan, but if you're watching this, I know you're watching this, but I love you so much and you're an amazing woman. When it comes to asking your instructors for references, I always let them know. I understand instructors are always like, you can always put me on your resume. Yes, thank you, I appreciate that. But I always like to ask them first and let them know, hey, I applied for this job. Would you like to be a reference? And you be a reference? And usually they'll say yes, and then that's just a way for them to know that there's a call or an email coming regarding whatever position I apply for. For me, that's also common courtesy. Hey, just want to give you a heads up. I put you down on my resume as a reference. I hope that's okay. In regards to my references with the job I applied for, they asked for 2, but I always give 3. I give 1 former instructor, the amazing woman that I mentioned earlier, 1 current clinical instructor for the year. Doesn't have to be this semester, but I used last semester, and also 1 PCC or CNE, or even the previous manager. It's up to you and your relationship with your unit, but I always put one of those options there. And So my references got sent out on the 15th. I submitted my references. My references came in that Friday. Yeah, they all handed it in Friday. I got an email saying all your references have been received. And then on the Monday, March 20th, I got a call back and my job offer. Now the one thing so I got my call back and job offer on the morning of March 20th. So that kind of gives you guys a timeline of my hiring process. Now that is just for me. Not every hospital will be that fast, and not every hospital might be that slow. Some people I know got an interview and they got hired the next day. I was honestly surprised they hired me because one, I graduate next year, and so my last day for this line is June 1st, 2024, and I actually didn't say I can't start till June 1st, 2023, because I go home and I pre-book shifts at my previous job, and they said yeah, that's fine. So I was really surprised they still offered me the job because I can't start right away. A lot of you guys are also probably wondering, what can I even do as an LPN in the ED? And I made a list. We can do a lot of things that a med-surg RN can typically do. We can start IVs, we can give meds, we can give IV meds and stuff like that. There are quite a few things that we cannot do, but it just all depends on the flow of the ED that day. The one thing we cannot do is initiate an ENR, the Emergency Nurses Assessment Record. So if a patient comes in and the initial assessment has to always be made by an RN, whether they came in by ambulance, police, walked in, all of that has to be done by an RN. Usually it's past triage, it's usually the first RN that you see. Here in BC, we can't insert NG tubes, we cannot do the first 15 minutes of blood. We can monitor after the first 15 minutes, but we can't start 15 minutes. We cannot initiate a heparin or insulin drip, and if anything needs to be changed, like the bag or anything like that, it usually is our RN partner to do that. We cannot IV push meds. IV push I barely see in Emerge anyway. I always see a lot of secondary lines anyway, but it's not in our scope to IV push meds. No PICC lines. We are not allowed to push meds through PICC line. We cannot draw blood from PICC lines. I'm not quite sure, but I'm pretty sure in one of the hospitals here in Alberta they do that, but it is a rural hospital, and rural hospitals in Alberta have a different scope to the city, if that makes sense. No internal med patients. This one is a very gray area. There have been plenty of times where me and my LPN coworkers have been giving internal meds. Internal med patients, we can do some of their orders, but sometimes the internal med doctors' orders can get so complex that we might need help, but I've definitely looked after internal med patients before. Initiate CWA. We cannot initiate CWA if the CWA is every hour and it's greater than 13, me and an RN might have to switch. I think the biggest takeaway on this is congratulations, you've graduated, you've finished nursing school. I always say that this is it. This is a step for your career. You are not tied down to one unit forever. The beauty of nursing is that you can explore other units like I was trying to do. I was honestly trying to get out of Emerge and see what else is out there, but I'm being called back, but in a different hospital. But yeah, nursing is not linear. If you want to go do Botox, do it. I am for it. If you want to stay bedside forever, that's great, that's on you. If you think one unit is not for you, but you think one unit is going to be where you'll be for the rest of your life, that is amazing. I don't think Emerge is for me forever. I definitely want to venture out into the ICU after my graduation, but yeah, so that is it for today's video. I hope you enjoyed it. I know I talk super fast, but I really hope you guys enjoy it, and I hope you guys found this video helpful, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!